Coming up on episode 42 of Create If Writing.
Whether you're selling a product in exchange for cold hard cash or you're selling a blog post for page views, you are selling something.
I can't go back to sleep, it's almost like...
Because truly, if you do it right, your email list becomes your community. But as far as directly speaking to your target audience, there's nothing that beats email.
Hello, and welcome to Create If Writing. This is the podcast for writers and bloggers who want to build an authentic platform without feeling smarmy or even being smarmy. No smarm at all. I'm your host, Kirsten Oliphant, and it's been a few weeks since I've released a new episode. I am deep in the throes of recording sessions for the Profitable Blogging Summit. And if you want to find out more information on that, you can go to profitablebloggingsummit.com, where you can find everything you need to sign up and register, some information on the speakers. We have over 20 sessions. I think it's going to be more like 30. It kind of depends. I'm doing a few extra. And some of our hosts, the other hosts are Holly Homer, Becky Mansfield, and Paula Rollo, who you may have known or heard from on this podcast or interviewed the Blogger to Business podcast, or you may just know of them from their own blogs, beckyandpaula.com, yourmodernfamily.com, beautythroughimperfection.com, and Holly Homer is over at Kids Activities blog, and also hollyhomer.com. So they are everywhere. We have been scrambling to bring you experts on not only blogging, but social media, on things like the legality of blogging. We have experts and industry representatives who represent brands and people that work with sponsors and affiliate links. It's pretty amazing, the lineup that we have. So you definitely want to sign up for that. And if you are on my email list, then you have been getting emails about that as well. And if you're not on my email list, let's get on that so you don't miss things like the Profitable Blogging Summit. You can sign up for my list at createifwriting.com/subscribe. In any case, I'm really happy to be back. It felt like a long break, and getting back to editing a podcast was just, oh my goodness, I forget how much work goes into editing each podcast. So this week I'm bringing you an interview with Kirsten Thompson, and she is someone I've come to meet through basically our mutual love of all things email. And you can find her at sweetteallc.co. So we're talking today about newsletters and how to kind of craft a really good email newsletter, if that's the style of email that you're writing. And we also talk a lot about general principles for email. So that's going to be a really great interview with a lot of actionable content for you as you're trying to figure email out, which email, again, I feel like it's the most important thing that you do, but it is sometimes the hardest thing that we do, and we can't figure it out, and it just frustrates people, and they kind of give up on that. They keep posting on their blog, but they don't work on email, and it just is really hard, but it doesn't have to be. A lot of it is about your attitude. So anyway, I just want to be an encouragement to you in that if you're struggling with it. So if you do need extra help on your email list and you just feel like you don't know where to start, or you don't know what to do with your list that's kind of stagnant, I also have created the free email course, which you can find at freeemailcourse.com. So this interview will be helpful to you. The free course is helpful as well. I'm going to go ahead and start the interview and lead you guys on into it. But I just wanted to say thank you so much for all of you who listened and all of you who emailed and said that you can't wait for the next episode. I love knowing that I have listeners out there who are binge listening and who are emailing me that they're listening and looking for more episodes, because I really do like being here. I don't get to hear your voices necessarily unless you give me a shout out somewhere or send me an email to let me know. But I know you're out there because I look at the numbers to see, and I know you're out there when I hear from you. So I do love hearing from you. If you're not part of the community as well, it's been a little quiet in there also because of the Profitable Blogging Summit, but you can find that at createifwriting.com/community. So I've given you a lot of links to look up today. And if you want the show notes for today's episode, they are going to be at createifwriting.com/042 for episode 42. So now let's get on to the episode with someone who has a beautifully spelled first name that is the same as mine with a different pronunciation. So today you've got Kirsten interviewing Kirsten. Here you go. Today on the Create If Writing podcast, I have Kirsten Thompson. And I have to say that I almost just said your name wrong right now because I'm Kirsten, you're Kirsten, and we spell it the same. So I have to remind myself, but I'm so glad you're here.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
So we have partnered up a couple times over this year to do some live trainings and different things together, which has been really fun because we share a common love for email.
Yes, email nerds unite.
Really, there's like two of us probably, but maybe a few more, But I'm really excited to hear your perspective because you and I have similar and also different experiences in the email world. And so I kind of want to dive in first and kind of talk about where you came from and how you got to be kind of where you are in terms of your blogging journey, especially for the people that don't know you, if they're new to you, but I know some of my audience is not. But share a little bit about your blogging journey and how you kind of got to the place you're at right now.
Sure. Well, I've been blogging for about 6 years. I started blogging just for lack of anything better to do, honestly. I love DIY and craft projects, and that's what my blog started as 6 years ago. And I quickly fell in love with the habit of writing and the community aspects that I found in blogging, just getting to know people from all over the world via the internet. It was pretty cool. And blogging was very different just 6 short years ago than it is now. So it was a little easier back then to kind of get to know people and spread the word. And I don't know, it's changed so much in 6 years, but I kind of got sucked in after about 3 years to the numbers game. I started chasing page views and chasing social media stats and trying to get as many sponsored posts as possible. And I just lost my passion for it. So I took about 6 months off at the beginning of 2014. And when I came back, I had a completely different outlook of fresh priorities. And I rebranded because I was in a totally different season of my life. So Sweet Tea and Saving Grace was born. And that's still where I blog primarily about just anything going on with my life, really. It's a Southern lifestyle and Christian blog. And I've been very blessed to bring on some really awesome contributors this year to kind of ease my workload, because I've also got a second blog now that I started in December that is Sweet Tea LLC. And that's where I host all of my educational content for bloggers, blog-related tips, email marketing, that sort of thing. So back in 2014 in the fall, after I came back and rebranded, I started offering services to other bloggers as a virtual assistant and just kind of organically became the go-to person for all things email, and particularly on the MailChimp platform. And I saw a need for that and just decided to capitalize on it. So I started offering just email services, not full-on virtual assistant services. I cut out all the stuff I really didn't enjoy and focused just on the things I really did enjoy, which was designing newsletter templates and helping people create content calendars for their emails and things like that. And I ended up putting everything I know about the MailChimp platform into an ebook called An Inbox of Opportunity and launched that in the summer of 2015. Fortunately, that led to a lot of other opportunities. I was able to lead a couple of sessions at Haven Conference last summer. I was part of Building a Framework by Abby Lawson as one of her expert interviews. I was interviewed on the Brilliant Business Moms podcast, and it developed very naturally into its own business. And I launched Sweet Tea LLC in December of last year, and that's where I am now. So now I host webinars, I teach classes, I take on one-on-one coaching clients, I host Blog Fuel, which is a private Facebook group for bloggers, all kinds of stuff. So that's where I am.
Yeah. And you and I connected, I think somebody recommended when I was talking about email, because that's what I talk about a lot. Somebody in another Facebook group was like, you really need to connect with Kirsten. And I was like, she's got a great name, so clearly I need to. Well, so you started getting more work doing email stuff. So like, what is it, do you think, that got you interested in email or got people interested in using you for that particular service? Like, how did that, do you think, kind of rise to like the forefront of what you were doing?
Well, when I started doing it almost, I guess about a year and a half, almost 2 years ago now, nobody was really talking about email for bloggers. I mean, email's kind of always been there, but it's not something that people really spend a lot of time focusing on, even though they should. And that's a soapbox for a different day. But I don't think a lot of people were really offering email services for bloggers. It was one of those things where I think bloggers know they need an email list, but they don't really know what to do with it. And they're not really sure what platform to use, and they don't know how to create content and all that stuff. So one of my regular monthly virtual assistant clients, she would randomly throw projects at me and say, hey, do you know how to do this? Do you know how to do this? And one day she threw email at me and she goes, hey, do you know anything about MailChimp? And I said, yeah, I've been using MailChimp myself since 2012 and I love it. And she said, well, I don't know how to do it. Can you help me? And so that kind of started things, and she was really pleased with what I did. I went in and designed her RSS campaign and a regular newsletter template for her, and I customized her sign-up forms. And she was really impressed. And she heard another blogger in a Facebook group asking about MailChimp, and she sent them to me. And it just kind of, steamrolled from there. I mean, I started getting random emails from different bloggers, and they were just letting me know, I heard that you know how to use MailChimp. Can you hook me up? And I was like, sure. So it just turned into its own monster at that point. And then the MailChimp portion of it kind of, took its own life. And I have this whole ebook and everything, but I really love the whole content creation and email strategy and that sort of thing. So I really started trying to coach my clients. So that's how the coaching part came about. And I started getting more and more people interested in that. And eventually I just kind of became the go-to girl for anything email marketing related for bloggers and for MailChimp. So it was very organic, which is what I love about the whole process. It's something that just kind of naturally happened, and I really enjoyed it.
It's really nice when that happens too, because I feel like you do enjoy the things more when they just sort of happen, or if it's something you're already interested in or already do, and then other people, like, it sort of starts to catch fire and other people take notice. And so it's a really nice feeling. You don't feel like you're pushing a service or you're trying to do something that's really awkward. Although there are times, and you may feel this way as well, where a lot of people get email and the importance, and then there are some people where I'm like trying to convince them, I think.
Yes.
And, just kind of in your experience, like, why do you think this is sort of a struggle and a stumbling block for so many bloggers?
The biggest thing that I hear the most from potential clients of mine, or just from people who send me email, they say, okay, so I know I need an email list, but I don't sell anything. And I hear that so often, but what I always come back with is, yes, you really are. Whether you're selling a product in exchange for cold hard cash, or you're selling a blog post for page views, you are selling something. It doesn't matter what it is, but there's some form of currency involved, and that currency might be page views. That currency might be blog comments. It might be sponsored post traffic. You don't know what that is. You have to figure out exactly what your product is. If it's simply a blog post, then it's blog posts. And that's why you need an email list, because ideally you want to get your target audience onto your blog posts through email. Social media can't give you that. And social media also can't give you the engagement that you get through an email list, because truly, if you do it right, your email list becomes your community. And those are the people who interact with you most often. They are waiting with bated breath for every new blog post you write. They're waiting for their next email. They want to talk to you. They want to hear from you. They want to know what's going on in your life. And then if and when you do decide to launch a product or service, they're probably going to be your best customers. So, I think it's just really kind of a mindset situation for a lot of bloggers, especially when they're first starting out. They're like, okay, I know that I need to get my domain and my hosting and this and that and get everything set up. And they really overlook their email list. But the long and short of it is, those are the people that you can talk to anytime you want to, just by simply creating an email and sending it, and it will get directly to them. You can't do that anywhere on social media. If you have an announcement to make, Facebook is not going to get it out for you like you want it to go, unless you pay for it. Same with Twitter, same with Instagram and Pinterest and all these others. They're all great platforms for certain things, but as far as directly speaking to your target audience, there's nothing that beats email.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think my audience is pretty savvy to this as well, or if not, they're like, okay, stop beating us over the head, Kirsten, because you tell us this every week. But it's still an issue, and I think people need this encouragement. I talk to a lot of bloggers who the issue for them is what you said, and also kind of a content issue, which I find really interesting because I think maybe it's a mindset thing, because I talk to bloggers who post like every day, and then they're like, I can't write an email. And I'm like, how? You write every day on your blog. You just have to sort of reframe whatever it is that you're thinking of email as this big, bad, scary thing, or whatever's in your mind, figure out your ideal content for your ideal people, and then you write it. But I know you can write stuff because you do it every day.
Right. And that's the most confounding thing to me. I mean, and I'm sure you've seen it in your groups, and I know I've seen it in my Facebook groups, but people are like, okay, so I have my newsletter template done, but I don't know what content to write. And I'm going, you're a blogger. You're a blogger. How do you not know what to write? I mean, it's exactly what you just said. It's like you create content every single day for your blog. It's the same idea behind creating content for your newsletter. But for whatever reason, people get this unrealistic pressure to make it something outrageous and awesome and phenomenal and bigger and better than any blog post could ever be. And it doesn't have to be that way.
Absolutely. I totally agree. I think it's a kind of this mental stumbling block.
Yeah.
But what, having created newsletters and written newsletters for so many bloggers, and I know you've gotten to see kind of what the back end of that looks like. So what have you seen, works well in terms of like a newsletter style email?
I love behind the scenes stuff. And I think, if you really think about it, all of us really want to see what goes on behind the scenes with other people. We're so interested in the back office view or the messy behind the beautiful images and those kind of things. I mean, we love reality TV. That's other people's messy lives that we get to watch from the sidelines. And your email is a really great place to engage with your readers on that level. So you can create this beautiful facade on your blog, but in the email, take them behind the scenes. Show them the mess that went into creating whatever that beautiful thing was. Show them the fact that you've got sick kids at home and you're trying to nail down a business. Show them the truth, the reality, the hard stuff, because that will get people to relate more than any blog post ever could. They're going to see that you're a real person, that you have real life struggles, that your car breaks down just like theirs does, that your kids get sick like theirs do. And I keep saying the kids get sick because myself and you and everybody I've talked to has sick kids lately.
Yep.
But, we're trying to run a business and we're trying to maintain our blogs and all that stuff while dealing with sick kids. And it's real life and it's relatable. And I think that that's the biggest piece of advice I can give for people struggling with content for their newsletter is to be relatable. Just be honest. I think there's just a huge gap right now in our blogging industry where authenticity needs to fill it.
Yeah.
And it's really frustrating as a blogger who has worked for 6 years to maintain authenticity and to always be honest. And then to see other bloggers who are getting these outrageous numbers who aren't so authentic. And it's really excruciatingly painful. But your newsletter is a really awesome place for you to show that authentic side of yourself and to show how hard you're working. But for people like you and I who also have the business side of a blog, we're trying to teach other bloggers and teach writers and teach other people how to do things. We have this awesome target audience on our email list who we can give first peeks at things. If we're developing a course, we can give them sneak peeks. We can get them to beta test things for us. We can get them to tell us which one of these 3 things do you want to see first. I mean, it's a really awesome way to connect, and people love having an opinion on things. So if you give your readers an opportunity through your email list to have an opinion on future content for your blog or future educational content for your courses or anything like that, that's going to build engagement too. People are going to start talking, and then they're going to be waiting for it to drop so they can get it.
I want to circle back to something you kind of talked about in this answer, and then also at the beginning when you're talking about blogging has changed so much, not just in the past 6 years. I mean, just even in the last 2 years. I mean, I feel like blogging is always evolving. It probably will always continue to evolve. But one of the big things that's changed is that blogs started out really personal. I mean, that's what it was. It was a web blog. It was like a journal. And it moved from being a journal to being a little bit more polished and professional. And then to kind of the age we're at now where so many people use stock photos, not photos of themselves or their kids, and some people have, there's a lot of different reasons for that. But, and not to say that's not authentic, but we've moved into sort of a more like magazine style, professional style, polished blog where it used to be, here's what's going on with the kids and here's the cake we made. And it's changed. And I don't mind all the changes, but I think I hear from a lot of bloggers who miss sort of that piece where they just used to slap up a post that was really personal and intimate. And I think email is such a great place for that. For those, for the bloggers, especially who are talking about how they miss that connection, this is that place. This is that place to peel back, as you said, the kind of, the outside thing and say, here's how we got to this point, or here's what happened. And I know in my experience recently, with something I've been finding is that my posts that I sort of write in a moment of passion, and I don't mean like anger, because don't write those kinds of posts, but I had a day where something was really on my heart and I just slapped up a blog post and, I edited it. It wasn't like I just really slapped up. I still did images, and the things I normally do. But that post versus the post that I planned and spent more time on and everything else the week before, the one I wrote in the moment that had the passion behind it is the one that took off. And this week with my email, the same thing. I was sitting down and I wrote this whole email and I kind of looked at it and I was like, this is fine, but there's no heart in it. And I deleted the whole thing and rewrote it. And I just sort of tried to turn off that part of my brain that keeps thinking about like the numbers or keeps thinking about, I don't know what it's thinking about, just being stressed out. And so I wrote a much faster email. I sent it out and I got like 15 responses within, like people replying to the email within like the first hour I sent it.
Yeah.
And so it resonates with people. And that's such a neat, powerful tool.
Yeah. And I was the same way just this past week. So, and I know that you definitely want to talk about this, but I just switched from MailChimp to ConvertKit for my Sweet Tea LLC list. And I sent my first email out this past Friday from ConvertKit. And I talked in there very openly and honestly about getting kind of slapped around on social media by somebody. And I didn't name names and I didn't really go into specifics, but I was very honest about it because I want people to know that it's not all roses. And, bad things happen to people and there's not nice people out there just because they feel like being not nice. And I kind of wrapped that up in a little bow of, you have to grow a thick skin if you're going to be in this business. And you really do. You have to kind of learn how to almost be like that dog in Up and just, be able to look the other way very quickly when things go wrong, because there's always going to be haters out there. There's going to be people who aren't so nice. And I told that whole story in that email, and I had more responses to that email than I think any email I've ever sent out. And it's because it was honest. And I think people really like to see, I know people really like to see if they look up to you and they see you struggle, you're more relatable. If you're honest about your struggles, if you're honest about things that you're having a hard time with, and like, I don't know how to do everything, but I'm really good at email. Yeah. So when I'm struggling with HTML and I tell people that, they're like, oh, she's human. She has problems. It's like, it makes us so much more relatable. And I do think that there's a lot of that missing now in the blog world. And it's really discouraging to see that because like you said, when we first started blogging, and for me, it was 6 years ago, it was very open and honest. And it was my day-to-day life. And I mean, I went back actually just recently on Sweet Tea and Saving Grace, and I cleaned up all of my post galleries. And I found some gems in there, some things that I talked about a few years ago that really inspired me to be a little more like that now. And it made me, even though when I rebranded, I came back with a completely different perspective, and I have been blogging a lot more openly and honestly, and just kind of whatever I want to talk about on that blog, that's what I talk about. I've still noticed that I try to structure it a little bit too much, and I don't want it to always be that way. Sometimes structure is necessary, but the whole point of blogging for a lot of people is as a hobby, and that's what I think is kind of ironic to me. I hear it all the time. People start blogging because it looks like fun and they want to do it as a hobby. But the first thing that they do is go, okay, so I need a domain and I need hosting and I need to learn how to do this and I need to learn how to do that. And I have to post 4 times a week and I have to have this. And it's like, that's not a hobby. That's a job. If you want to blog for a hobby, just start a Blogspot blog and go for it. Write some content. Who cares if anybody reads it? It's like, you don't have to have any of that stuff.
Well, and I think the thing is, whatever your why is, like if you're doing it for a hobby, if you're doing it for a business, if you're doing it just to communicate things about your personal family or to teach people, whatever it is, I think, you can choose that level of vulnerability on your blog, and it may be really different depending on, if you're doing it as a business, that may not be the place, but your email is a great place for that vulnerability. So for the people who are missing that and yet don't want to change their blog back because it may not fit with, your why, it may not fit there, that email list, it is the group of your biggest raving fans. And if they are turned off by your vulnerability, they weren't your biggest fans to begin with. So they're not somebody you want on your list. So that's the thing I think, the taking that fear out of it and remembering kind of who you're talking to, that these are your people. And I think that makes a lot of difference. And when bloggers kind of realize that, it makes it a little bit easier to be like, oh, okay, that's what I'm doing. That it doesn't have the kind of high pressure sense. And we write better things that way when we're not being pressured, And
absolutely.
I think vulnerability is a great point of connection, and it makes a deeper relationship when we're vulnerable. So if you're struggling with what to write in your email, that may be something, and it may not, depending, like I'm not as vulnerable in the business side, although I do share the struggles like you said as well. And that does create a point of connection. But I have 2 different lists, and I have 2 different email service providers. I use MailChimp and ConvertKit as well.
I do too.
I want to talk a little bit about that and kind of ask you, like, what would you recommend, what would you recommend to your clients in terms of like, how do you make a decision between something like a MailChimp or something like ConvertKit?
Well, from somebody who started on MailChimp 4 years ago, and I am still on MailChimp, my Sweet Tea and Saving Grace list is still on MailChimp, and it's going to stay there. Some of the things that you have to consider, I think the first thing for a lot of people, especially when they're just starting out, is cost. I hate for money to be the deciding factor, but if you're not making any money from your blog, you're probably not going to want to spend money, unless you are starting a business blog and you're going to eventually be selling courses or some kind of service or whatever, and you need it to be more professional, then you might want to start out paying for something. But if you're one of those people we were just talking about where you want a blog to kind of be a hobby or just for fun, or you're just starting to grow your blog, you may not want to, spend a monthly fee for an email service provider. So you definitely want to consider that. But you also need to look at the features and decide what your goals are for your email list, and make sure that whatever platform you decide to use is going to help you meet those goals. And a lot of people kind of look at me like I have 2 heads when I say you need goals for your email list, but you really do. You need to know exactly what you're using it for. And so prime example for me, I'm on MailChimp with Sweet Tea and Saving Grace, and my goals for that list are just to let people know what's been going on with my family and give them updates from the blog in a monthly newsletter. And that's it. I have genuine conversations with those people. I have a private Facebook community where we just kind of hang out. We share prayer requests, we share meal ideas, and it's just kind of a girls group almost. And that's what that list has become. And I get really good engagement there as well. But I don't need to segment it like crazy. I'm not trying to promote any kind of educational content there. I'm not trying to, sell anything or whatever. So it's very basic. And MailChimp does everything I need it to do. I'm able to create a welcome series through their automation workflow, and I create really beautiful emails through their template builder with all the design tools, and it works. And that's what I need. For Sweet Tea LLC, the reason that I moved over to ConvertKit recently is because I need more than MailChimp can provide to me now. So that's also something to consider as you grow. How are you segmenting your list? Is it able to do the things that you want it to do? And in my case, it's more of I have several different projects that I've got in the works, and I want people to be able to get targeted emails for each one of the projects they're interested in. And if they want to opt out to one thing, they can still get the other thing. And that's very difficult to set up in MailChimp. I can create courses through ConvertKit a lot easier than I can do through MailChimp. So it's really about knowing what your end result needs to be, or what you want your end result to be for your email list, and then doing literally a side-by-side comparison for all the features in the platforms and deciding which one's going to benefit you the most and get you to where you want to be for your email list. And so there's not a right or a wrong. It's totally different for every person. MailChimp is amazing. MailChimp has so many features and they're really cost efficient. If you do have to pay for a list over there, it's very affordable and you get a lot of bang for your buck in MailChimp. And their customer service is second to none. I mean, they really are a phenomenal platform, which is why I still use them. ConvertKit is also an awesome platform and it does some things that MailChimp can't do. So you have to really do an apples to apples comparison. But I think knowing where you want to end up is going to help you get started, if that makes any sense.
No, it totally does. Because, you don't want to, if you are like, I know I'm going to do a business stuff and I know I need to segment and I know I need to be really complicated with my list and do some things that are fancy, but I don't have any money. I'm just going to start on MailChimp and switch things over. That can be really hard. I know you spent a lot of time this week, like figuring out how to sort that stuff because it is every email service provider is different. Whether you're moving to ConvertKit or MadMimi or Aweber or any of those, it takes time to set that stuff up. I mean, it's totally possible to switch. So if you're like, okay, I just don't have the money, I'm going to have to start here and switch, that's fine. But if you're able, and especially I feel like, with ConvertKit, it is pretty affordable at $29 a month for 1,000 people. Now, if you don't want to pay for email at all, that sounds outrageous and crazy. But when you consider once you pass that cap of free in MailChimp, you're going to start at I think it's 40. It's just something to think about. And yeah, you have more people, but like you said, you just have to sit and make a comparison and decide. But if you're one of those people we were talking about at the beginning who's just totally stressed out by the idea of email, just start somewhere.
Yeah, just start something.
Pick MailChimp. I really like MadMimi as well as a starting point. And if those are too fancy, there's another good one called Tiny Letter, and that's run by MailChimp, but they just don't have as many features. So you're not going to have analytics. You're not going to have very little. I mean, it's just straight up for emailing people, and you get 5,000 people free. So awesome. Yeah, that's a great one. And if it's run by MailChimp, that it's done well.
It's done well, yeah.
Don't stress out about this part, but when you're ready, it's really important to think about who meets your needs. And so I love to hear your story that kind of like me, you have a list one place for one thing, because my list as well for my lifestyle blog, it doesn't need to be on ConvertKit yet. I mean, if I started creating a whole lot of products related to food and recipes and parenting, then I might want to do that, but that's not where I'm going with that blog. So there's no need. So I love the common sense wisdom there for you.
Yeah. And it was kind of funny too, the response I got, because, I'm a certified MailChimp expert. I'm on their expert directory. So when I switched and I wrote a blog post about it, I had so many people email me that day and go, oh my gosh, so do I need to switch? And I'm like, no, you don't have to switch. And that's what kills me is, I don't want people to be sheep. I really encourage people to do their own homework on all of this stuff. Do your own research. You don't need to be on any kind of platform just because I am or just because Kirsten is. What we do for our business is not necessarily what's right for your business. So definitely do your own homework, do your own research, figure out what your goals are and find something that works best for you. Because like we said, MailChimp's perfect for so many people and ConvertKit is perfect for so many people. There's not a right or a wrong. So it is what it is, but there's always going to be those people that jump ship because somebody else does. And that's fine, I guess. But one of the things that I definitely want to point out, though, I've heard in the months leading up to my decision, and Kirsten, it was literally months for me to make the decision to switch to ConvertKit. I really had so much anxiety about this decision. But in the months leading up to it, I heard so many people say, I just never understood MailChimp, so I switched to ConvertKit. Okay, when I dig a little deeper into those comments, people didn't take the time to learn MailChimp. And they did take the time to learn ConvertKit. And I want to just point that out because every new platform, every shiny new thing has a learning curve. So if you are struggling with the MailChimp platform, figure out how to use it. There's 8,000 tutorials. I have a tutorial myself. I have an ebook on how to do it. But there's gobs of tutorials on the MailChimp blog that show you how to use it. If you don't know how to use ConvertKit, there's tons of tutorials out there for how to use ConvertKit. So don't blame the platform for your lack of education. And I just really want to point that out because so many people don't take the time to learn how to do things. They just kind of go, oh, well, it just didn't work because all they did was create a login and that was as far as they got.
Yeah. And I think most of them are so easy to use now. I'm like, are they crazy? Because I mean, MailChimp, I just don't think is hard. I guess it depends what they were trying to do with it. But I just feel like that's the place where most people start. It really is simple to set it up in a day and start getting subscribers. I mean, it's just not that difficult. And like you said, there's so many tutorials, and I've got some workshops on that, replays of live workshops I've done. You've got courses, and if you Google it, there's some amazing, just tons of MailChimp tutorials, and ConvertKit is getting there. I know there's a course I just saw somebody launch on Teachable on ConvertKit. I'm like, I should get that, because there's still things I'm figuring, I love the platform, but there's still things every time you switch lists and switch providers, there are things that you're like, wait a minute, where's this? How do I find this? How does this work here? And it's just not the same. So it is an undertaking, but it's not, you don't have to feel like you're locked in, because you just download your list and you go somewhere else. But it does take, there is a learning curve with each platform, and you kind of have to, the same thing like we talked about in the beginning, like dedicating, making this a priority, and then taking the time to educate yourself and taking time to write and actually make it a commitment to do this email thing. And it's so worth it. I feel like, the more I've poured into this, the more results I've gotten back.
Oh, absolutely.
And there have been some times where I've seen, and for my lifestyle blog, for example, I do think the newsletter style is harder. The open rates will be lower. I can say that having two kinds of lists. Because our inboxes are crowded. They just really are. And so unless people really, 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 really just love you, or they love your writing voice, or you have some kind of like insane offer and it's in the subject line, people, they're not as pressed to read it, because it's more sort of like entertainment. It's something that adds value, but not in terms of like money or saving time. It's kind of about that connection. So you're not going to have some kind of like 80% open rate, but this year, I did find I was struggling. Like, I felt like I was trying harder in my email and seeing the open rates go down. And I think part of that was, as I said in the beginning, even after like 4 years of doing this, I think I was overthinking it. And I think I just sort of lost that connection. And then I also had to go clean out a bunch of people who never opened ever. So that's a whole other topic for another day that we might have to talk about, is list management and cleaning and all that, because that's just... yes, a whole other thing. But that really helped, was taking out a lot of people. And I emailed them first and was like, do you want to be on the list? And a few people responded and said, keep me on. And then a lot of people unsubscribed themselves. And that helped getting rid of, I think I deleted 500, 600 people.
Yeah.
Which felt
I got rid of 900 people at the end of the year.
It hurt. It felt really like awkward, but then it was like really relieving. Kind of like when you get rid of clutter and you go through your closet and you get rid of those shirts that you're like, this shirt. And then you're like, oh, I don't miss that at all.
I look at it this way, especially, and I know that this is totally, we're going to get to this on a different topic, different day, but just to touch on it just a little bit, I look at my subscribers kind of a little bit like people who are renting an apartment from me, especially when you get to the point where you're paying for your list. So when you have a list full of people who are squatting, they're just sitting there and taking up space, but they're not paying rent. And by paying rent, I mean opening and engaging with your emails. They're just taking up space, and it's time to evict them. And it's not a mean thing that you're doing. It's something that you're doing for the betterment of your blog and your business. And it warms up your list nicely, and it makes things so much easier on you, because, I know for a fact that there are people who get my emails and delete them before they even open them. And that's okay. But if they don't want to open my emails, I'm going to do them a favor and stop sending them. And I'm going to do me a favor and take them off my list so I don't have to pay for them anymore.
And I don't know why I do that too. Like, I definitely have things I subscribe to, and then I just delete. And I've been asking myself this question: why am I on this list? Like, I think who did I unsubscribe from this week? Office Depot. And I'm like, why am I even on your list? I do not ever go to your store, but I must have signed up for some offer somewhere. Yeah. But I just kept deleting them and not unsubscribing. And I was like, why? So, if you're doing that too, like, take a moment to clean up your inbox. And if you're not really open an email. Are you interested? Are you not? Delete. But if you find yourself deleting like every time they come, then why? Just get off yourself. But
and I've actually been more cognizant of that, I guess, just ever since I've started actually being in the business of email marketing. I'm very aware of that. And I make a point of, if I see an email hit my inbox that I know I don't really care about, I do try to go ahead and unsubscribe from it.
Yeah. My big thing this weekend, this is I don't even want to get started, but this kind of will start us. I've been unsubscribing anytime somebody sends affiliate links that are not labeled as affiliate links.
Ah, yes.
And I know you and I have talked about that, and I had a whole episode about, which I'll link to in the show notes, about people not disclosing. But recently, like the other day, there's some company that's doing a special, and I got like 5 emails, and only one person out of 5 said this is an affiliate link. And I know that it is, because once you kind of know the signs and the companies, you just know, or you may be involved as well. And so to me, that's just bad practice. You're breaking my trust, and I don't want you in my inbox. And so I actually put that in the little note too. Like, I appreciate your email, but I don't want I want people to disclose their affiliate links. And so that's become my stupid little crusade that just, you have those little pet peeves, and then they don't ever go away. So
we could totally do another one on etiquette.
Yes, we should do that. So I'm making a list of all the further episodes we need. Well, I want to wrap this one up. If you just had like a couple of tips that you would share with people, like quick tips on what to do if they're kind of stuck in their list. And I know that could be they could be stuck anywhere, but what are some of the top tips that you might give somebody struggling with email?
As far as growing their list?
Yeah, growing, or even just like some of the roadblocks that we've talked about. But if there's any tips that we haven't covered.
Well, as far as growth, I'm a big advocate for organic growth. I don't think it should ever be forced, because you want people on your list who are actually going to engage with your emails. But I think one of the things that people often overlook that is so simple for organic growth is to let people know you have a list in the first place. And I know that sounds really simple, but people don't do it. They'll create a sign up form and they'll stick it in their sidebar, and they never mention it. They don't mention it in a blog post. They don't mention it on social media. They don't ever mention it. And so I think that's one of the biggest things is, shout it from the rooftops. Let people know that you have an email list, and let people know how awesome it's going to be when you send a newsletter, or that you've created this awesome content upgrade or opt-in offer and all that good stuff. And so I highly recommend including mentions of your email list in your social media strategy. It doesn't need to be every day by any means, but at least once or twice a week on social media, let people know that you have an email list and encourage them to sign up. And that's very simple to do, and it's often overlooked. So start using that today.
I like that. Very simple.
Yeah, super simple. And another thing is to just, stay authentic. I mean, that's what we have been kind of harping on today, but it's just, if you get that prized email address from somebody, don't abuse it. Send them something of value, or don't send them anything at all. And I hate to even be so cut and dry about it, but people don't want junk. And like Kirsten was saying, people don't want spam, which is exactly what that is when they send those affiliate links and don't disclose. It's spam. People don't want that. So if people are going to give you, if a reader is going to be so kind as to give you their email address, be nice. Treat them like a VIP, because that's truly what they are. They are your target audience. They are engaged with your content enough that they want more of it through email. So treat them well, and they'll treat you well in return. And I guess the final thing that I don't see in enough emails, but I do see in yours, Kirsten, and I love, are calls to action. I don't think people use calls to action nearly enough, but we are doers naturally. And if you tell us to do something, we're probably going to do it. So if you tell your readers to click on something to tweet it, they're probably going to click to tweet it. If you ask them a question and tell them to hit reply and respond, they're probably going to hit reply and respond. But so many people will write this amazing newsletter, and then they're just like, all right, see you next week. Bye. And that's it. So calls to action, put one in every email, whether it's a question, whether it's a click to tweet, whatever it is, if it's to register for something or whatever, tell people what to do. They're probably going to do it. But I definitely encourage asking some form of question and responding when you get a response from your readers.
I love that. And, I'm glad you said I did it. I was worried for a second, like, do I do it? But I have found that for me, something that has been really amazing and probably my favorite part of sending an email is the responses I get back. And I didn't used to get responses. And the reason I didn't is because I didn't ask for them. And so that's such an important point. And a lot of people, if they're not somebody like us who's a blogger who has kind of been around the block a little bit, they don't know that they can hit reply. Like when you get those, from MailChimp or something, it's it's an email, but you also know it is a little different than an email. Like it comes from like a company. It has a template.
Right.
And so
Yeah.
I don't think people always know they can hit reply and get you. Now, the thing with that is if you don't have your settings correct, then it's going to go nowhere. So I
Right.
have a friend who he has a big list. He's a musician, and I hit reply and it went to like, I got like that mailer demon, like there's no email address. And I was
No.
like, hey, come on here, like fix this. Because you probably have fans emailing you and they're not getting anywhere. But
yeah, make sure that you have your email settings set up properly. Cause I mean, that's so sad.
yeah, it was really disappointing, but he fixed it because, I emailed him about it. But the other thing too is that may not work for you if you don't want to have that kind of relationship. So if you don't, please don't ask for a reply, because there's nothing worse than when you reply to one of those emails, because sometimes I do it as a test. Like, if I'm really moved by something, I'll hit reply, because I know for me, I love that. So even if they don't ask me, I'll reply. But I really hate the sort of canned responses. And, I do understand why people do it, especially if you're really huge and influential and have thousands and thousands and thousands of people on your list. But I will say that there are some really big name people that will still hit reply and just say, thanks so much for reading. And that means so much. And maybe it's their virtual assistant, but
right. Which is totally fine. But it's still better than a canned response or no response at all. And I'll admit, I do take sometimes up to 3 or 4 days to respond to all of my emails, but I always respond, even if it's just a simple thank you. And I can't tell you, it's kind of funny when people first subscribe to my list, the very first email that they get is a welcome email to my community. And I tell them a little bit about my background. And then I ask them, what's your biggest struggle as a blogger? And hit reply and tell me. And I'll get emails from that. People respond and they tell me their struggles as a blogger, and I respond. And I've had so many people email me right back and they're like, oh my gosh, you actually replied. Thank you so much. I'm like, I'm a real person. I'm not this big fancy person that's just sitting up in a little soapbox watching the world go by. I genuinely want to know the answer to that question. And I genuinely want you to be welcomed into my community. So I appreciate them taking the time to respond to my email. So of course I'm going to take the time to respond to theirs. But that's how you build that know, like, and trust factor that is so important.
I agree. And, if you really don't want to sit and have a bunch of emails, because there are probably some people listening that are like plugging their ears like, la, 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 I don't want any more.
Right.
Send them, if you're going to send them to a blog post, maybe that's your call to action, and ask them to comment. And, you may or may not comment back. Some people comment to every comment, some people don't. That's, again, all of this is your personal choice. But if you don't want them to respond, give a different call to action. Send them to a blog post, send them somewhere else, ask them to comment or connect in Facebook. Give them something to do. But I love that call to action thing. But I will say, I will give a very strong vote for asking people to hit reply. And you might even need to say, like, hit the reply. Like, that's actually how I sign one of mine is, I'm on the other side of the reply button. Click it, because I think, again, people need that invitation if that's something you want to build. And I have people that have been, I feel like we're friends now, and we connected through them replying to my email.
Yeah.
So it's a neat thing, but that may not be, depending on your business or your blog, that may not be what works for you. Yep. So don't open the door if you don't want to be on the other side. You don't want the people in your house. Don't open that door.
And don't put a call to action like that. Don't ask a question in an RSS campaign. Don't put it in there, because people will respond and you will not. And that's just not cool. So if all you're sending is an RSS campaign, just ignore that whole part about calls to action.
Yes.
Your call to action is already in that email. They're clicking through to the blog.
Yes, that's a total. Yeah, this is all kind of like newsletters or ones you're actually writing and setting up, not the automated. So, well, I always end my interviews asking people what's inspiring them this week. So what's inspiring you this week?
Honestly, as cheesy as it sounds, my community on Facebook is inspiring me. They inspire me every single week. I've got just an awesome group. It's blogfuelgroup.com. And it's totally ridiculous self-promotion, but it's not my group. It's everybody's group. So if you're a blogger and you want to be in there, it's an awesome place. But we started a thread just today where we kind of give a shout out to people who have been inspirational or an encouraging part of our lives as a blogger. And it's just been really cool to sit back and watch that thread take off today. And people are just being really sweet and encouraging. And I think, it was inspired actually by a dear friend of mine that actually you mentioned recently, Sharon Hines from Mrs. Hines' class. I love her. She inspired this thread because she made a point of saying in the group recently that, you know, as bloggers and business owners who work from home, we don't always have that encouragement. We don't have a boss telling us we did something well or we're doing a good job. So it's always nice to hear it from people who are kind of in the trenches with us. And that's what inspired this whole thread. And it's just been really cool to see people giving other people a pat on the back for different things. And I just love that. I love that aspect of blogging probably more than anything else, is just the encouragement from the community.
Well, and thanks for my shout out that you gave me in that thread. I was like, hey, what a nice way. You know, I opened up Facebook for the first time and I'm getting like a little like shout out. And it was really nice. So I'm in the group too. It's a great group on Facebook if you're looking for a blogging community. So, well, thank you so much for taking the time to chat with me about email. And I've made a list of things we need to talk about in the future. So.
Yeah. Well, thanks for having me. This has been really fun.
Yes. Well, again, I will leave links to all of your info in the show notes where people can find your best content and my favorite content of yours. But I'm really glad that you took the time to come on today.
Thank you.
Okay, so hopefully you pulled out a few tidbits that can help you with your email list, whether you're writing a newsletter, whether you're writing kind of just a monthly roundup or weekly valuable links for resources for people. I hope that this has been really helpful to you. And if nothing else, just to get you started, stop letting email have this weird hold over you where you have this mental block like you can't possibly do it or you're not seeing results. You've got to just try. And I know I'm actually about to relaunch my paid email course, Own Your List. And I just heard from Horace, who is a dear member of my community who I got the chance to meet last year and who always has great things to say. And he said that his open rate actually increased by, I think it was over 10%. So he had just emailed me that. So that's really great to hear that after going through the course, the paid course, Own Your List, he was able to kind of take a sort of dead list that wasn't getting any traction to something where he's got above average open rates now from what he used to have. So that's fantastic. I love hearing those kinds of success stories. And you'll be hearing a little bit more about Own Your List if you're subscribed. And I'll probably talk about it on here as well. So for now, I leave you with this great interview from Kirsten. Go check out her site as well. You can find all the links in the show notes at createifwriting.com/042. Thank you so much for being one of my listeners. I do so appreciate you. And as always, I hope you have an inspired week.